Mr. Rahu's session will be moved to tomorrow. For the time being, we will have a 1 hour podcast, sustainability podcast by the Royal Netherlands Embassy. They will be here in a few minutes.
Assalamu alaikum. Can I have your attention, please? With you is Zainab Al-Lawati, host of Istidama Bridges, a special program brought to you by the Embassy of the Kingdom of Netherlands in Oman. This program aims to connect sustainability influencers and leaders from the Netherlands with the Omani audience to share ideas and experiences so together we can shape a more sustainable future. Our podcast will start in a few minutes. To start this podcast, please help me welcome Her Excellency Stella Claude, the Ambassador of the Kingdom of Netherlands, for a short welcome speech. Her Excellency, the stage is yours.
No, thank you, and welcome all with the third edition of the fourth edition, isn't it? The third edition of the podcast with Estimada Bridges. As the Embassy of the Kingdom of the Netherlands, we are proud partner with Estimada Bridges to do a range of podcasts on sustainable topics. Sustainable developments, the SDGs, but today we have a special topic which is related to the Oman Sustainability Week, and that is what we will do a podcast with the CEO of Circle Economy, Ms. Ivonne Bojoh. Ms. Bojoh has been with Circular Economy since 2020 and is now the CEO since almost 1.5 years. As the Kingdom of the Netherlands, we did a partnership with Circle Economy to bring them to Oman. They did the Circularity Gap report almost 2 years ago, stage 0. And now they are taking that forward together with the Ministry of Economy. So I think it will be really much interested to listen to Mrs. Bojoh and to ask also your questions to her. And please be aware that will be a live stream, so you can also follow it on Instagram. Give a warm welcome to Mrs. Ivonne Bojoh.
Thank you, Your Excellency. So, Istidama Bridges is a program where we explore ideas, innovations, and sit together with the people leading change towards a sustainable future. In our first episode, through the lens of nature, we talked about the importance of protecting our natural ecosystem. And then at the second episode, Climate at Crisis, we looked at climate change really close, from raising sea levels to melting glaciers. And we also discussed, the causes of that, such as the waste management in mega cities, as well as the global food system. And together today, we would like to explore solutions to these problems. So I'm very happy to welcome Ms. Bojoh here with us, CEO of Circle Economy. Welcome to Oman and welcome to Istidama Bridges.
Thank you so much. And warm welcome to everyone in the audience and also on the live feed on Instagram. Thank you so much for this invitation to talk about solutions, because in the end, there's a lot of research, there's a lot of data, but it really is time for us all to make different choices and implement solutions.
Absolutely. And thank you for being here. I think for the audience, whether you are in manufacturing, retail, or services, this conversation will provide you with practical advice in your journey to go circular. Circle Economy Consulting is a leading firm that helps companies transition from linear to circular. And it's born from the Circle Economy Foundation, if I'm correct. And you have such an ambitious goal of doubling global circularity by 2032. So that's such a big goal. Can you tell us first about the foundation, and then why did you need to create a consulting firm beside that, and how together you can achieve this global circularity target?
I think most importantly, it's important to understand the global circularity number. I don't know if anyone's aware in the audience today what the global circularity is. The first time that we as an organization started measuring global circularity, which really means to take stock of all of the material that we extract as a global economy and how much of that is reused in our economy. And the number 7 years ago when we started was 9%. And tomorrow at the World Circular Economy Forum in Sao Paulo, Brazil, we will present the latest number based on our research for the 2025 report. And I can't give you the scoop because we have to wait until tomorrow. But what I can say is for the last 7 years that we've been measuring it, it's always trending down. And even though you see that this event, but events around the world are increasing in popularity, there's more policies around circularity and sustainability across the board, we're still moving backwards when it comes to the actual number of circularity. So yes, it's a challenging mission, and it's even more challenging because we've been going backwards since we started measuring. Now, a lot of the people are asking, why are we going backwards? And that's not because we're not making an effort. It's not because we're not transitioning to sustainable solutions. And it's not because we're not trying. It's just that our global population continues to grow, which means we need more housing, more schools, more roads, especially in growing economies. So while we're still growing as a global population and still wanting to grow our well-being, material usage goes up at a rate that is faster than what we're transitioning to a circular or a sustainable state. So yes, we're making an effort, but it's not enough. And this is where really not just the public, but also the private sector, the financial institutions, academia, and the startup community need to come together for an holistic approach of the systemic change needed. And for us as a foundation, we are a nonprofit organization helping the public and the private sector. And for us, business consultancy is really helping businesses transform their product design, their product development, to really understand how they can implement these solutions. And sometimes the private sector does not want to be open about that, so it's very much closed door sessions to help them, and that's also a need where we saw we can help.
So basically we need to go at a scale and at a faster space to cope with all our increasing demands. Let's ground our audience first. What is circularity? How do you define it in the business context? And how does it differ from your traditional sustainability initiatives?
It's a big question. And I think in general, circularity is linked to recycling. I think most people would say circularity is recycling. That's why we look at waste management. But we cannot recycle our way out of this because we're stuck in a linear system where we take virgin material, we create something, whether it's this microphone, this stage, our clothing, and then we discard it at the end of the use. And when we look at the linear economy as a business model, that's where we take virgin material, we create something, and then we throw it away. In a linear economy, recycling is the last resort. So before we do anything else, before we do landfill or incineration, we recycle. But that's the last solution. When we go back up the R ladder, as we call it, it actually is about redesigning the product in the first place, and the R of refuse is the first one. So refuse buying new stuff if you don't need it. Refuse that single-use plastic and try to find different solutions. So it's really about a intrinsically motivated personal choice. So yes, companies need to transition and the public sector needs to create the right policies. We need to get our economics right from a financial perspective, but it is about your choice as an individual. Where you spend your time, where you spend your money, where you spend your energy, that's what's really going to truly drive this transition at scale.
Yeah, that's interesting. We are in a culture now that we are just fast consumers. We consume everything and discard it. So it's just taking and then using and wasting it. So it's just like one-way street, the way we deal with Earth, unfortunately. Also, just to remark, like maybe 20, 30 years ago, things were built to stay, right? But we're going backwards. We're building things for a day or two. So definitely designing out waste, we need to rethink that. So let's let's talk about the real work you
Can
do.
I add to
Yeah,
that?
sure.
So it's not just about designing out waste, it's really about what does success look like? Right now, when we become more affluent, it is successful to have a new dress every time. It's successful to have a new phone every year. It's successful to have multiple cars, a bigger house, a yacht. That's the metric for success in our society today.
It's monetary.
Yes, it is, and it's materialistic, and in that sense, it's human nature to desire more and the fear of missing out because my neighbor has something that I don't have. So it's a very, very foundational issue that we have as humans that incites greed, incites jealousy. If we were just happy with enough, that already makes a huge difference. Then the overproduction of fast consumer goods would change. The overproduction of food, the food weight, everything would change. But it really starts with our inherent nature.
Okay, then I have to go philosophical here. How do we achieve inner happiness then with what we have? How do we stay satisfied?
I think what you call the fast consumerism is often instant happiness. We have a bad day and it gives us pleasure to eat something, or it gives us pleasure to buy something. And that's only possible if you have the money to spend. There are still millions of people that have less than we have. So where is it that you get your happiness and your pleasure? It becomes a very philosophical discussion. So it's a philosophical issue, but it's also the way that we teach our children what happiness is about and what you should be doing in life. In general, I think it's good to have a business that thrives and a business that is generating a good product for their clients, but it is not right to generate revenue and profit at the cost of everything else. There needs to be a balance.
There needs to be a balance. So when you work with companies that they're interested in starting their circular economy, for example, what do you find like the most misconception that they have about circularity?
There's nothing I can do. Someone else needs to solve it.
Okay.
And that's whether it's policy. Well, I'll wait until there's policy, or I'll wait till my consumer or my customer wants it, or I'll wait until my shareholders change something. It's very much pointing at every single other player in your value chain, in your supply chain, waiting on each other. And I think that waiting game is causing delay across the board. But my simple answer would be we really need bold leadership. We need people that would actually stand up, choose to do it because they believe in it, because they believe things need to change, and not because policy is dictating them to do that, or because they need to comply to some law. It's because you inherently know that things need to change. And that bold leadership will actually transform supply chains, will transform product design. But it's not going to happen overnight. And I think often enough, the most crucial conversation is not in the boardroom, but it's at your breakfast table with your children. It's at the breakfast table where you're challenged by the ones you love to start caring about something.
Okay, we will be very lucky if we have ethical companies with bold leadership who really believe in, protecting the environment and circularity. But let's say we don't have many of them, right? We still have so many companies that probably will look at the business case of going circular. So is there a business case?
To go circular?
To go circular?
I think there's enough examples in different sectors that prove that it is definitely possible. I think it makes it increasingly difficult as long as we don't get the economics right. If we're still subsidizing one part of the industry and we're not subsidizing the other part of the industry, being linear and circular, it's not fair game. It's not a level playing field. And I think that's where policies can happen, can make a difference. But instead of owning a bicycle, if you have a bicycle subscription, or if you don't own a car, but you can hail a ride. So there's different ways of looking at what are you really trying to provide. And I think that's where things also start changing, that there's subscription models, that there's the right to repair, extended producer responsibilities. Those things will force you to change, and then automatically it becomes a viable business. On the other hand, if you're a resource-intensive company, at some point, it will become inevitable that you need to change your ways because that material might become so expensive that your business model doesn't work anymore.
Absolutely. Maybe COVID was a good example of that.
For sure.
Of needing to reuse everything that you
Resource
have
scarcity.
and resource scarcity, exactly.
And also border security, food security, job creation. The circularity is not a silver spoon. It's not something that will change the world magically, but there's a lot of circular solutions that will provide more resilience for your business, will provide jobs for your nation. So there's a lot more to it.
Yeah. So there is a business case. Perhaps companies are not considering all the factors for building that business case. And usually with sustainability initiatives, we have a problem of, calculating the return of investment. Like we don't calculate it right, and that's why the business case for sustainability initiatives are always like not optimistic, and you wouldn't choose that. So are you able to help companies, or how do you help companies calculate the return of investment for going circular?
I think it starts with setting goals. If you look at Oman, just staying close to home, with the ESG reporting, there's one part, and now also with the Zero Emissions Center, there's also another angle to report on, which is your emissions. Now, it's very possible that your 2026 business plan has a certain bottom line, but that it doesn't comply to your own emissions strategy. So now you have to also take that into account, which is another line on your profit and loss balance because it's an investment. And I think that's where, as an organization, you need to take it as an investment, as you would do R&D, is you are transitioning to a new state. And yes, you have to make ends meet at the end, deliver towards your board, to your investors, to your customers, but it has to be part of the equation. And if it doesn't work, then you also need to reconsider maybe other parts of your business model.
Okay, so you really need to rethink your business model. Great. So before we go into that, let's look at the industry. Which sectors do you find are leading the circularity, and which ones are a bit lagging or they're not really going circular?
We've identified 4 primary systems that have the biggest impact on the current state of the world economy, being the built environment, because it's so resource intensive. When you're building buildings, it takes a lot of virgin material.
Okay.
The second is mobility, because of its footprint, obviously, but also consumables, so anything we wear or anything that we use. And then there's the food and agri system. So those are the 4 primary systems that need to transition. But they all require different solutions.
Okay.
Now, if you would dive deeper into which one has the most traction, it's generally the ones that are most visible. So if we talk about plastics, there's a lot of attention going into plastics use, which is not a sector or an industry, but it's one use case, if you will.
Okay.
And then there's a lot of attention going to clothing, to apparel, to ensure that we use recycled fabrics. But that does not take away the overproduction. So it's not enough to focus on one angle or one element. You really have to look at the global value chain of textiles, for example, to also take into account the footprint of transporting the goods, right? You might be growing cotton there, but then you're flying it or shipping it there for it to become a yarn, and then you're shipping it somewhere else to become a garment, and they're shipping it somewhere else to sell, and then you're shipping it somewhere else to your consumer. All those shipping lines or transportation lines need to be taken into account, but also the role of informal workers, making sure that we leave no one behind. So it's a complicated analysis to pinpoint what to solve. And there's attention going into different industries, also depending on the country, depending on the lens that the country is using. Do we need to focus on everything at the same time? We, as Circular Economy, don't think we do. That's why the Circularity Gap Report that we publish for the world, we transformed that methodology to also be applicable on a national level to pinpoint per nation what is your vocal point? What do you need to really address first to make the biggest impact? And that's why we're very happy with the support of the Dutch Embassy that we were able to do the Phase Zero analysis last year And now with the Ministry of Economy, together with BIA, working on the analysis for Oman so that Oman can also develop their roadmap towards a circular state, pinpointing exactly the sectors that are most relevant.
Amazing. That will be a big milestone for Oman, definitely. Yvonne, you talked about the sectors that have a lot of potential to go into circularity. But right now, at this moment, what are the numbers? Like, which sectors are actually doing it?
Again, every sector is very different per region. So what we did is we actually captured 3 categories for nations. So we have the build, shift, and grow economies, because the need for growing economies to build schools and hospitals and housing is very different than a shift nation where everything has been built, where the growth of the population might be slower. So there's no one size fits all. So for example, in European countries where we are saying those are shift nations, when you're repurposing buildings, you need to look at the stock that you already have and repurposing that building material. Whereas in other nations where you're actually building for the first time, the solution might be in bio-based materials. So also the solutions are quite different, but what we see in general, and that's also a study that was done by Chatham House, is the rapid development of policies across the world. There are more policies than ever, obviously, but there's thousands of policies in the making which will be launched in the next 5 to 10 years that will really also change the rules of the game, and that will also accelerate the transition.
Okay. Well, we talked about rethinking business models, and we have like concepts such as product as a service or extended producer responsibility. So how do you incorporate that in your existing business model?
For example, there's a bicycle producer in the Netherlands called Swap Fiets. Fiets is bike.
And we know there are a lot of bicycles in the Netherlands.
Yes, there are. Yes, there are. And this company is actually providing you the ride on a bicycle rather than for you to own a bicycle. So you have a subscription-based model. So rather than selling you the hardware, they're selling you the service. Like you said, it's really hardware as a service. And I think those are the types of things that can be considered. There are steel companies out there that will provide steel, but they won't transfer the ownership of that steel to you. They're saying, this is the steel, you use it in whatever shape or form you want. At the end of the use, we'll take the steel back. And then we can repurpose it. And the same goes for mobility. There's car subscriptions now. Rather than hailing a ride and not owning a car, it's you have a subscription to a car, you drive it for as long as you want, but it also comes with an open platform that other people in your neighborhood could actually use your car when you're not using it to optimize the use of the vehicle. Instead of you using it for 20 minutes to go to the office and back, and for it to be idle for 23 hours a day, you can now optimize its use. So it's optimizing the usage. That's really the circular economy is about using material for as long as possible, for as frequently as possible, at the highest possible value. Because once we throw it away, it becomes trash and it becomes worthless, which is very incorrect. That's why valorizing waste and making it a resource is a mind shift.
But this a service and not a product, it's a bit difficult, let's say, in a culture or societies that are used to individual ownership. It's kind of a shift of thinking and a shift of culture. And I'm assuming that it provides benefits to the consumer to switch to sharing a bike rather than owning it. Otherwise, they wouldn't go for that option, right?
Well, I think when you own something, you also have the responsibility to care for something. You have to maintain it. And if that responsibility, if that's no longer is yours, that you don't have to take care of things, that is just a far more convenient way of having the same ride, I think that's where consumers might make different choices. In the end, I think as humans, we're also always looking for convenience, like what makes my life easier. And if it becomes harder and it's more expensive, then I don't think we're inclined to do anything.
Exactly. For the extended producer responsibility, so it kind of makes producer responsible to collect, the products after its life cycle and then recycle it. And this is a great way of financing recycling. But there are concerns whether these costs are shifted to the consumer. What are your thoughts on that?
I think that is a risk. I think it's a risk that it might shift to the consumer. I think it's because some companies might not be viable if they do take that responsibility. I think it's a natural way of, or it's a natural cause and effect. Something's changing, and it's going to hurt somewhere. And I think then it's up to the consumer to say, do we still want to buy that product? Because now it becomes more expensive for me, or it becomes more of a hassle for me. And at that point, maybe that's also where the R of refuse comes in. Now, what also happens is when we become more involved in the impact of our choices, I think that's when we will also try to consider making different choices.
Interesting. Okay, so let's say I'm a company that wants to go circular, and I would come to you. I would come to Circle Economy Consulting. So can you walk us through the process of that, of the engagement to the assessment?
So it really starts with understanding your need. So to give you some examples, some companies will approach us saying, we want to do something with circularity. We don't really know what it is. So then the first engagement might be a strategic workshop to raise awareness of the senior team, just to highlight what it is, what policies are out there, what compliance might be coming down the line, just to raise the general awareness. Right now, there's a greenhouse gas protocol which was developed over 20 years ago by the WBCSD. And they now realize that there's not a single metric globally that people can refer to. So now in development as we speak is the Global Circularity Protocol. Okay. So it's also important for businesses to understand what that might mean. So this is where we will bring that to that organization. Another example might be that they're aware of circularity. They want to do it, but they don't know where to start. Okay. So for example, a retail organization might approach us and say, we have different product lines, where do we start? And we would then start with a material analysis to understand what materials are going into their product lines and what could become more circular by making different choices. Okay. So that's where we actually do an analysis of the material flow and highlight the different solutions. Another option might be that there needs to be general training of their production lines. So that's where we go in and actually train the trainer. We don't train everyone ourselves, but we really want to transfer that knowledge. And then we train the trainer and ensure that the workforce is more aware of circularity. And last but not least, we also try to look at what are the different examples in the industry so that we can connect the dots. Because as a nonprofit, our one and only mission is, as you mentioned, to raise the global circularity. So for us, it's also really about connecting the dots with other solution makers, other industries, to see if we can actually have cross-pollinations of different solutions so that we can bring people together. And that's also where we believe that convening the different stakeholders, that's where the magic happens.
Okay, so let's have a positive story here. Can you share with us an example of company that successfully transformed or transitioned to circular?
I think in general, it's a longer process. So it's not something that people would actually engage on today and then be done in a year. And I think that the transformation that we see within companies is something that would take time because they want to transition their product development, their product design. But we do see the success in the collaboration between the private and the public sector. So once we measure the circularity of a nation, we don't just deliver a report, but during that process, we convene industry leaders, the academia, and the policymakers to work together in a safe space to ensure that there's a common understanding of what circularity is, on what solutions are needed and how to move forward. And that's where we actually see, for example, in Scotland, but also in Ireland and in Denmark, that 2-3 years after we've done our analysis and delivered the insights, that policies are changing, that companies are changing their production lines. And that's where the data analysis, the data-driven approach makes things tangible.
Okay. Interesting. And as you said, it's a different business model of a different way of thinking about the business operation. That's why it takes time to teach the staff and to change your operation so you can be successful in going circular. Looking ahead, what trends do you see in the circular economy adoption on a global scale?
I think globally we see that the conversations around circularity are increasing, but we also do see that defining the starting point is quite challenging, and that sometimes it ends up in a very generic policy brief. And that then informs the circularity roadmap, where we believe that if it's more a data-driven approach, the efforts going into the circular solution implementation are far more effective. They have a higher result. And the trends that we're seeing right now is that there's more adoption of circular solutions when it comes to product design, different types of material usage, and also the perception of waste into resources. So instead of doing mining, can we do urban mining? Can we create eco parks where the output of one company becomes the input of another company? We see the trend increase of circularity becoming more of a topic in academia, that it's being taught more in schools and in universities. We also see that circularity is now more linked to the economy rather than just sustainability, because it's a systemic shift and there are positive outcomes for regenerative economy. We see positive trends for job creations. So it's good that it's not just seen as a solution for climate and sustainability, but really about transforming this economy to a new economy.
It's a resource that has value. I often heard that, waste is just, there's no such thing as waste. It's just the right materials or resources at the wrong places, maybe with the wrong hands. So it's something that is useful for the country, and it provides opportunities for employment, for utilizing your local resources. And you've been here in Oman for a couple of days or maybe more, and you looked at our waste sector and Oman circularity. Any remarks or observations so far?
How do I stay unbiased? Because I've been quite impressed. I was here 2 years ago for the first time, and I see the steps that are made as a nation and in the collaborative approach. And I think that is exemplary for how to connect the different players to ensure that you're moving as one. And it's not to say that it's an easy journey, but to make sure that the policymakers, the industry leaders, and the financial institutions are working together to recognize the problem, to share a common language, to agree on common indicators and goals is a huge step. And what I see also at the awards last night, but also at the opening this morning, is that Oman has made such strides in a short period of time that I also see a role for Oman to take more of a leadership role, leading by example, for maybe the GCC region or even the MENA region, to really showcase the problems that you've had here, how you challenged them, how you overcame them, and how that can inspire others. And I think also looking at the whole energy transition, that's one side of the same coin. The other side is implementing circular solutions to look at the footprint of material use. And I also see a genuine push and a genuine desire to become more circular. And I think that's exactly where we need people to be to make different decisions and different choices.
Okay, great. Such optimistic remarks of Oman's current status in circularity and waste management. I would like to invite the audience, if you have any questions, we have the mic around here, so you can. Okay, we have someone here at the front.
So also had a question. The lady in the front, yes.
Thank you so much, Ivana, for a very insightful session. I have a question about the mindset. I know there are many amazing examples coming from Netherlands and European countries in terms of how they are applying circular economy and how they are also engaging broader communities to be within that. My question is what did Netherlands did in terms of that? How we can encourage people to use these business models and be part of the solution Because a while ago I was proposing for my sister that I park my car and it's parked for 8 hours during work time. So I had an idea of, can I rent my car during that time? She said, Aisha, you're crazy. So how we can change this mindset? Is it like the policies? Is it I don't know, what type of ecosystems we can do it as a country level to encourage people to use circularities like in different models? Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's a great question, and the European countries, the EU in general, has been said to be the leader in circularity, is seen by different countries as leading when it comes to legislation and policies and even innovation. And I wouldn't say it's true or untrue, but I do think that every region also needs to look at solutions that are relevant for them, because not everything that happens in Europe would be immediately applicable to different regions. But to take it as inspiration, as information, and taking the lessons learned for sure, but also really trying to find your own way and see what's fit for purpose for your economy and for your region and for your people, I think is really important. And as to the mindset change, that's always going to be a difficult one. Like, if it doesn't hurt, you're not going to change. Whether you want to stop smoking or whether you want to stop eating meats and become a vegetarian, it's an intrinsic motivation. And I think the first step is raising awareness. And some of the videos that were shown at the opening today, one of them is about a grandson asking his grandfather why his car needs gasoline and why isn't it driving on a battery like his toy car. I believe that some of the pivotal moments will happen at the dinner or the breakfast table, where your children are asking you questions that you may or may not have asked yourself, because they just have a different lens. They're coming from a different generation. They're growing up with different information that will make us make different choices. So that motivation might as well also start at home, when you start caring about things differently.
Yeah. And I like the idea of renting the car during work hour. Maybe that's something we should work on. We have a question here.
Thank you first about this session. I would like 2 points or question. What to get? What suggestion? What you are suggestion to do to get more recycle or use solar energy, or to get better, because solar energy in Oman or others costly. Other things or second things. What Netherlands process in this matter or subject, which is about how to make istidama or stability for your Netherlands, what they do, like they made a rule, or how they get more to recycle, or like these steps. Thank you.
Thank you for your question. To your first point, I think it's really important to highlight the potential of solar power, the potential of wind power, the potential of water power. I think all of those are really relevant, because yes, they might be expensive, but any innovation takes an investment. And that's why we need to start our product development and our investment theories with a multi-generational strategy. So it's not just about the financial year, next year, or 5 years, or 10 years. It might take 30 years for it to be a financially viable model. But it needs to be a choice, because it is the right choice to make. But that also takes a very different approach from your shareholders and your investors. That's why it really is a joint effort across the board, which is not easy, because it does take a huge amount of investment. And the impact investors today are very different than, for example, investors in startups that are more looking at, we invest in 50, 48 might fail, 2 become unicorns and have great exit. So it's very much about the fast returns. And I think when it comes to impact and renewable energy, it's a very different model. And we also need to wean off one and build the other at the same time. We can't overnight go from no more fossil fuels to renewable energy. It's something that we need to transition. And that, I think that happens in every big disruption in human history. It's either catastrophe and we have to do something else, or it's a choice and then it's a gradual process. And I think that's where we need to be ahead of the game and not wait for the catastrophe to happen, but really already start that transition ourselves. As to your second point for the Netherlands, yes, there are national policies, but there's also a very strong either city level or regional push towards circularity. And one specific example that I'm very proud of is a province in the northern part of the Netherlands called Friesland. And they started on their circular journey 10 years ago, bottom up. So there were companies in that province that said, we need to change our ways. What we're doing right now is hurting our environment. It's not sustainable. We need to change. And we believe that circular economy has the solutions that we need to implement. So it's not circular solutions is the end game. That's not their objective. They're saying we care about our environment, we care about our resources, we need to do this differently, and we believe that the circular economy has solutions that we want to implement. And now fast forward to 2025, 10 years later, they're still very actively involved with the companies in that province, the local government, the local banks, and the national government to transform their province. And they're really, really ahead of the curve. And that attracts investors. It also attracts startups and innovation. And for them, it's really important to be seen as a leader so that they can inspire provinces in different parts of the world. So they're now setting up a global movement with different regions and different provinces so that they can share their learnings. And I think that's almost driven by personal motivation and not even by policy. They really did bottom-up approach, grassroots movement that informed policymakers. They just turned it around.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions?
Yeah, it's very good. Yeah.
Thank you so much for this inspiring, can you hear me, session. I'm just going to ask this question because the bottom line between sometime going from corporate side of circular economy to the individual people who's sitting at home. So what is the action you can do as an individual? Today, I think everyone has been here, maybe could be working for corporate and working for companies or non-profit, but I'm saying what I can do as a person sitting at home or something I want to teach to my brothers, my mothers, my father, or something like I can make this change without being in a meeting with a corporate or maybe management or policy, just something I can do at home. But this is my question.
Thank you for your question, because that is really, really difficult. Because often enough we say the policymaker needs to make new policy, the companies need to change, I'm just a consumer, what can I do? So it's a very good question, and it's hard to answer because we often feel that our individual choice doesn't make a difference. Like, okay, I refuse this straw. What's the difference? I refuse to buy a car. What's the difference? So we always try to, maybe not try, but we always think that our choice is very small. But not to name any names, I'm not going to name and shame our brand, but as consumers, you and I make a company successful. Right? Because if we all buy this brand, or we all eat this food, or we all fly with this airline, we make them successful. And I think we often forget that as consumers, not as employees, but as consumers, we have great power. Right? Because some companies are very, very successful because we buy their products. And we like to be seen with that brand, or we like to be seen with that product. So for us to also take responsibility to say, well, I don't want to buy that brand, I don't want to fly that airline, or I don't want to fly at all, that is a very impactful choice. And especially if you really believe in it, and you tell your mother and your brother and your cousins why you're doing it, you will see a mind shift. And a personal story. So I joined Circular Economy Foundation in 2020. Because for the longest time, I'd only built startups, technology startups. I started working when I was very young, and I'd always done startups. And I joined Circular Economy not because I wanted to join circular economy. I joined because I went on an internal search of what do I need to do. So I have 25 years of experience in work. What do I have to show for it? What did I do in the world? How did I make a difference? And I didn't feel like I was living a purposeful life. And when I did search for, well, what companies make a difference and how can I contribute, I came across Circular Economy Foundation and I chose to work for their mission. So for me, it's not a job. Now it's my life mission. It's my life mission to transform the world towards at least 17% circularity. And that's a choice that you can make and your brother can make and your friends can make, because we sleep for 8 hours, ideally. We sleep for 8 hours. We spend 8 hours at work, generally, and then we commute a little bit. So, work takes at least 10, 11 hours a day. Where do you spend your time? If you have a choice. Not everyone has a choice. Some people just need to make a living and they work wherever they can. But if you can make a choice where you want to spend your smarts, your energy, your time, your dedication, that's also a personal choice you can make. And even leaders of industries, highly placed individuals, if their shareholders or their team do not believe in transforming towards a sustainable future, you should also take your presidency elsewhere. And I really challenge everyone to make different choices if you are able to. If you're in a position of choice, make a very conscious choice, because at the end of your life, you will look back. And that's your life.
I'd also like to go back at what you said about being a materialistic society. We're made to think that buying these things makes us happy. So maybe this is the time to rethink, will a new phone, a brand new phone, will a new piece of cloth really makes us happy? Or this is what companies are making us believe, that our wants are our needs. So it's really a personal choice, starts from a personal choice and thinking about our purchase decisions. Any other questions? We have one there at the back.
Thank you for your talk so far. I was wondering, in the Netherlands, we have some political pushback on prioritizing climate change, climate neutral measurements, circular economy. How do you convince the political leaders that eventually will make the policy that it is needed to change at this moment? And as well, their supporters, because in the Netherlands, there's a big pushback on people not believing climate change is the most important problem to solve right now, and they think there's other issues which are important too, which have way more prioritization than climate change, fighting climate change. Thank you.
Very valid question, especially seeing not just in the Netherlands, but in the world, all of the geopolitical movements and everything that's happened in different regions of the world recently. We believe that a circular economy is a systemic shift. It's changing the linear economy as we know it today towards a circular economy. Yes, it's been linked to climate change and sustainability because it solves those problems, but we believe that it's not the reason to do it. The reason to do it is really to look at our material flows and looking at the safe boundaries of our planet that makes it a livable planet for us. We truly believe that the planet's billion years old. It'll survive, but it's our own survival. And the systemic change that's needed might now be slowed down because policymakers are prioritizing defense or prioritizing other areas. You can only spend your money once. So understandably, that might change throughout time. And I think that's also something that we as an organization cannot influence. Our influence is very limited. So one of the things that I continuously say is we want to support the willing. We want to enable the willing. We don't want to pull on, whether it's the private or the public sector, the unwilling. Because in the end, there are enough people who want to change, they just don't know how. But if you're unwilling, then Circular Economy Foundation with 70 people, we're not going to make a difference. So we only want to help organizations and nations that really want to transition. And that's why I'm very grateful for the opportunity to be here in Oman, because Oman really wants to change and they're driving this. So that's why I'm here. And there are other nations out there that want to. And if the Netherlands, who's already worked towards sustainability and circularity for the last, I would say, 10, 15 years, is now prioritizing other things, I think that also is inevitable. It'll come in waves, and at some point, I'm pretty sure it'll pick up. There are still provinces and cities that are working towards this. When the national governments are not prioritizing it, there are still pockets of movements that will continue.
Do we have any other question? Yeah? Okay, so let's have a question from our own, and then can we please check our live stream comments as well? Go ahead.
So what role do policies and regulations have to do with adopting circular economies, specifically when it comes to product as a service models? So for me, for example, me as a consumer, I don't have as much control over the product as the producer. So how do I make sure that I'm not scammed when it comes to that?
How do we make sure you're not scammed? That's a good question. Because scammers will always be out there, right? They'll tell you they're using recycled material when they're not. They'll tell you it's sourced locally, it's not.
Greenwashing.
Yeah. You can't avoid it. I think maybe some due diligence on your end, some awareness about what you're really buying, what you're getting into is needed for us to not blindly believe everything we see. I have this little card at home that says, "Don't believe everything you think," but it really is unfortunate that today we cannot trust the brand or the supplier or the producer. Sometimes you just have to be more diligent and look into what we're actually buying. But I do think that in general, there's enough information out there to make those choices. And if you do feel scammed, then for sure, I think social media also helps you to inform many others to avoid them.
And when it comes to renting instead of buying something, how would that be priced fairly? So should I be renting it for like 10 years for it to be the same value as buying it? I don't know if that makes sense. And it makes sense.
Sorry, can you please repeat the question?
So in product as a service, you rent something instead of buying it, right? So how do you put a value to it? How do I make sure that the value is equal to both the consumer and the producer?
I think that is definitely something that a producer needs to also take into account in their business model. So for example, if they would produce a bike and sell it at 100 euros, but then as a service, it might be 20 euros a month, then it doesn't make any sense because no one's going to buy it because 5 months later, they would have bought the whole bike rather than renting it. And I think that's something that is also the business model will prove whether or not it has traction because consumers are buying it or not, or business to business is actually engaging in business. So I think that naturally happens because we can all calculate. So I think when it comes to some of the business models that are failing is because it's too expensive. Unfortunately, some of the recycling plants in the Netherlands, for example, have failed because they couldn't deliver the yield needed to make the business model work. And that's not because what they're doing is wrong, it's because the economics aren't right. So we're subsidizing this, but we're not subsidizing that, and that's why they can never win. So we have to create a level playing field when it comes to policies, but also the investors need to start investing differently to enable this transition to actually happen.
Unfortunately, our podcast has come to its end. So let's conclude with final remarks or advice that you would give local companies who wish to go circular.
I think that looking at Oman and your history, and apologies, I'm not an expert, so this is just based on my limited knowledge of the Sultanate of Oman, that transitioning towards the future and embracing new industries, looking at how you can source locally, how you can develop resilience within your own borders, creating jobs for Omani, I think that's where the priority should lie, to really be powerful and resilient and affluent as a nation, redefining those principles. Like you said, like what makes you happy? What does success look like? And I think that starts very much close at home. And I think business owners in Oman, also with the awards ceremony last night, are already showing tremendous ability to innovate. And I think it's really powerful to take those innovations and also inspire neighboring countries or other countries in other parts of the world that have a similar economic makeup, that might also have a port or might heavily rely on energy sourcing. So I think that's where connecting with others out there and leading by example is the best thing you can do.
Thank you, Yvonne, for your insights and for your time. I really hope that this conversation help you rethink of circularity not just as a buzzword, but a practical, scalable strategy that businesses can use to thrive sustainably. Thank you all for listening, whether here in person or on our live stream. We will be sharing, inshallah, clips of the podcast on our social media at Istidama Events. So please follow us, share it with who you think is interested, and stay tuned for our upcoming episodes and events. Let me conclude with wishing you a very productive days at Oman Sustainability Week. Thank you all, and thank you again for being here with us.